Hello and welcome to AA Beyond Belief, a podcast by, for, and about people who have found a secular path to sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is John, and I am here with my co-host, Angela. Angela, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John. Happy to be here. Happy to be celebrating this milestone.
Well, thank you. I feel like I put you on the spot because I think it was like a month ago. I was so excited about this. I said, Angela, would you do an anniversary show with me and just interview me and ask me questions? It's like, so it's like basically saying, you do the work, please. And then I started thinking about it. I thought, well, what if I can't answer these questions?
Yeah, I wrote down some doozies that, I used a lot of big words, and we're going to talk about square roots. And
okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's I just can't believe that so much time has gone by. And I kind of really wanted to have an opportunity just to maybe give a little background history of how AA Beyond Belief started, and also to thank the people who worked with me to make it possible, and to somehow verbalize, which is so difficult for me to do. And I think you might relate to this, Angela, verbalize just what it means to me. And when I have interactions with people who listen to the podcast in particular, I just don't know how to put it into words, but it's a really, it's a deep, this whole podcast thing has just been a transformative experience. And I just felt like I just wanted to find some way to celebrate and acknowledge it. So that's what we're here to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, with that, one of the things that I wanted to know is how it started, how you got the idea. So my understanding currently is that in the beginning, there was John S., and he went to an international AA conference for Freethinkers, and that we'll just say Freethinkers because the rest of it is really long. But basically, there's a guy, John S., and he's been sober for a while and kind of like blah about sobriety where he's at, and goes to this thing, and and so. What happened after that? Was it that you went there that weekend and then suddenly you're like, I'm going to put together a website?
Well, it's very interesting that you're right, though. It did kind of start there. Everything started there in Santa Monica in 2014. I swear to God, that conference changed my entire AA life from that moment on, But basically what happened, I went to that conference and I happened to be on a panel about websites. And I was talking about the website that I built for my group, We Agnostics Kansas City. And at that time, I had the website for the group, and I also had a blog where I would do a lot of writing. And then Roger C. From Hamilton, Ontario, was also on that panel, and he was talking about his website, AA Agnostica. And so I knew about Roger. I knew of Roger. Everybody at the conference knew Roger because of his website. And after the panel, he gave me a compliment for my website, and we exchanged words, and that was pretty much it. And we went on our separate ways. But then after that conference, he and I stayed in touch, but a lot of us stayed in touch. I mean, we came back from Santa Monica, and we kind of stayed together through social media and so forth. I did get involved with a little group called WAF Central for a while. And we built a website that was actually kind of like, the prelude, I guess, to what became the Secular AA organization. And I was working on that for a while with Dorothy and a few other people, Dorothy and RJ and Steve. And there's been different people involved. But we were working on that for a while, and it was kind of unraveling, and towards the beginning of the summer, that was kind of winding down. And Roger contacted me, and he told me that he'd been working at AA Agnostica for 4 years, and he was getting tired, and he was ready to move on and do other things. And he was wanting to retire. And he was going to discontinue posting on AA Agnostica. And he asked me if I would create a site to kind of carry on that work. And I was kind of surprised, first of all, that he was gonna retire, because I thought a lot of his website and a lot of his work, and I knew that it meant a lot to a lot of people. but I was also kind of surprised that he thought that maybe I could create something, and it was kind of intimidating to try to follow that, but I said, yeah. And Roger and I kind of went to work creating the website. And I knew from the beginning I wanted to have a podcast. Even though I've never done a podcast, I definitely wanted to include that as part of the deal. I want to say hello to people out there. There's some people in the room that have been making some nice comments. I just want to say hello. Joe M, and Doug K, and Mary, and Bree, and the Facebook people that I can't see their names, and Peter T,
Peter, yeah.
and Dale K. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for coming every Friday and being part of this. It's just, it's a lot of fun. So anyway, I interrupted you, Angela.
Oh, I was just curious as to why a podcast? You said that you knew from the beginning. So we have that, the background of that you knew how to kind of put together a website and, an articles or blog type thing, that was there. So what was it about doing a podcast that you wanted to do, or that seemed important for this?
So I was listening to podcasts, for a few years. And it started with that period of time when I was considering that I was an atheist. I was realizing I was an atheist. I can't even quite remember when this was, maybe back in 2012. It was like a couple year process. And I listened to these atheist podcasts, and I really enjoyed them. I got a lot out of them. And so I understood podcasts from the listener's perspective, and how, what a valuable tool it was, I guess, to communicate and to put across ideas and to connect with somebody. Although I don't think I really realized that in my frontal lobes, but somewhere inside, I kind of realized that there was something about that medium that was special. And
did you ever listen to like the tapes, the AA speaker tapes?
Not so much, but I have.
Oh, okay.
Now I did listen
if
to.
There was a connection there.
No, but Josie did. I listened to Josie's podcast, and I really liked his work. And I still do. He just does that. He does such a great job with his podcast. He's very professional, and he always does a really good write up. And obviously, he puts a lot of thought and work into the podcast beforehand. But he helped kind of shape my views of how I feel about AA, and I guess he helped me find my place in AA as a secular person. And his podcast made me think of things that I hadn't really considered before. I learned so much from listening to his podcast, and so he was a real inspiration for that. But what really clicked it for me, or whatever, cinched it for me, was I went up to Omaha, Nebraska, which around here in the Midwest, you've got Omaha and Kansas City and St. Louis. So anyway, Omaha is a great place to go. Anyway, I went there and I participated in a podcast with RJ and a couple other people, and it was about atheists in AA. And it was a fun experience. This guy was so professional. He had this equipment, and he could edit the audio and do all this stuff I couldn't even imagine doing. But I was so excited about it, and we went out to lunch afterwards, and he was telling me how I could do a podcast, and he recommended different equipment for me and so forth. So I had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do that. And this AA Beyond Belief, and at that time I didn't even know what I was going to call it, but this site that Roger was suggesting, I thought it would be a good idea to have a podcast. And the idea was that what I would do is I would interview people who were submitting articles. So like anytime someone would write an article for AA Beyond Belief, then I'd have them on podcast and we'd talk about what they wrote. That was the whole idea. And I was thinking, well, this will be great because it can be kind of multimedia. Instead of just, written content, we can have audio stuff too. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do. But I never had done a podcast and didn't know what to do. But just, Googled and figured it
out. Watched a couple YouTubes and you were good, right?
Yeah. Hey, Ginger. Ginger's from Kansas City.
And I see John on there as well, and Doug.
Yeah, John. Hey, John.
Very cool. So, what were your other hopes and dreams for the website and the podcast, and have they come true? What are the things that are easiest for you, and what are the things that are still kind of difficult?
Well, that's a good question. Yes, I could say yes, that what I envisioned for the website has materialized. So to one extent, and maybe not to another extent, but basically it was important for Roger that we continue to be a place for agnostics and atheists in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that it be clear that we are not outside of AA, but we are just people in AA who have found a secular path, And so all of the stories would be an opportunity to reflect the experience of secular people in AA. And so that was going to be important. I wanted to make sure I did that. But we would also write about things that wouldn't necessarily fit as a topic at an AA meeting, but would be what we would talk about after the meeting over coffee, So some of the stories, some of the articles you see there, you might read it and might think, well, this really isn't AA. This is about the naltrexone or whatever, it's like, yeah, that has nothing to do with AA, but we might talk about that over coffee after the meeting, it's that kind of thing, because they're just things that I thought that would be of interest to people in AA, people in recovery in general, but people in AA specifically, and secular people more so. So we were able to achieve that. I also wanted it to be a site that wasn't necessarily identified with one person. I didn't want people to think of it as my website. I wanted it to really belong to the community, and I think to a large extent we have achieved that, but not to the degree that I would have liked to. So what I did, I actually created a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, and I got some people to help me. Put them on the board of the corporation, and the whole idea is that I wanted to create something that would live on regardless of who was involved with it. So it would be I would just be a person that was working there with other people. That's all. Yeah, and that was going on for quite a while. I got some help. And I'm going to start with this group of people, but this is like the second group of people that came in to help me. Doris A. from Urbana, she became the chief editor. I made her chief editor, and she was also the president of the nonprofit. And Thomas B., and they were both from Illinois, Central Illinois, Urbana, Illinois, that area, Champaign-Urbana. Thomas B. and we were on the corporation. And then PJ from Australia, he was an editor. And then Galen from New Jersey was an editor. So we all worked together on this. And how it worked is Doris would go find people who would write stories for us, because it's like, we weren't being flooded with people sitting in stories. We had to actually go out and ask people to write for us. And she was really good about doing that and then following up with them. She would just really be on top of them. Have you written a story yet?
She's the reason why I was in Toronto was that, she contacted me and said, your group's been around for a while. Do you want to send somebody to be on a panel? And so, we talked about it and we're like, sure. And so that's how I ended up in Toronto. Yeah, she was very persistent. She did a great job. And so she brought in PJ and Galen. And basically what she would do, she would get an article, and then once she got it, she would send it off to either PJ or Galen to do more editing and copy and proofreading and all that kind of stuff. And it was a great help to me, because they took care of all the written articles, and I could focus on the podcast. And so I would just do the podcast. Doris would take care of the articles, Doris, PJ, and Galen, and the authors who wrote them. And when they did do that, I would post them on the site. But I also trained Doris, and she started posting them, where I didn't even have to do that after a while. And so we all worked together on the site for a couple of years. I mean, some of us still are. I mean, Doris had to leave. Doris finally
I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a huge amount of work. Doing this, it could really be a full-time job, and to a certain extent, it was for Doris. I mean, she was putting in so much time, and she already was working for another nonprofit in Urbana, and that she loved working for, Books for Prisoners, and she, she said, and she was moving with her partner to Wyoming, and she just had a lot going on, so she left, and so that just left PJ, me, and Galen, and then that's where I'm struggling, I guess, where I might need help. It's that it's very difficult to carry on the stories and the podcast. And sometimes I honestly think about just giving up the part of the stories, the written stories. But then it's kind of funny. This week I had like 3 or 4 people contribute articles. So you just never know.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to help with the AA Beyond Belief, you can contact him and maybe help do some proofreading and stuff, if that's part of the website that you want to continue to exist.
I think I've kind of decided that I want to get back to where it's a group effort and less just me kind of doing things, and that's just like was important to me and still is important to me to do that. So I really need to kind of strengthen that part up again, to build that back up. But I think what I'm going to do is kind of continue what I'm doing with the podcast. And then if we don't have a story to post, we don't have a story to post. That's fine. And if we do, we do. And maybe we'll redesign the site to accommodate for that, for the times when we do and don't. But yeah, I definitely, people who could submit articles would be great. And then getting people on board that would just kind of help with the business side of AA Beyond Belief. That's where I've kind of failed. I used to be really good about letting people know about like the business side, like, where do we get our money? Where do we spend our money? And I do like financial statements and post them online and stuff. God damn, it was just too much. I couldn't do it anymore. That and hold a job and everything else. So, it'd be great to have a group of people, to have a treasurer, someone who would do that. And I have actually had people who volunteered for this, but then the thing was, I just didn't have time to organize the group, so I just kind of got to get my act together on that. But yeah, overall, I think that things turned out just the way that I was hoping that they would, So,
very cool.
Yeah.
So when did the Facebook group start? Why did you?
Okay. So the Facebook group I started that because, so when we came back from Santa Monica, we started the secular AA coffee shop. It was called the Waft Central Coffee Shop, I think, at the time. I don't know. Anyway, so we started the coffee shop, which was a Facebook group, and it was growing and doing really well and everything. And I was pretty involved with it. But then things on Facebook get really weird. There started being some fights, and it seemed like people were, anytime I would post something, it would just be people fighting about it. It's just a miserable experience. So, and I was having this on all Facebook groups. It seemed like people were wanting to debate and fight. It was just a nasty experience, it seemed. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to start my own Facebook group for AA Beyond Belief where I could post these stories. And, if anybody yells at me, I could throw them out of the group, So that's what I did. And in the beginning, yeah. And in the beginning, actually, I was kind of firm. I mean, if anybody did the slightest, problem, I just throw them out. But not so much now. But anyway, it's kind of funny. The group has really grown and evolved. You mentioned today 2,000 members now.
Yeah. When you go to the top of the page, it says something along the lines of AA Beyond Belief private group, 2,000 members.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. And it's interesting how that Facebook group has evolved. I think overall, as far as Facebook groups go, I think it's a good one. I think it's fairly healthy. I mean, every once in a while you'll get some posts that people might not like or are kind of controversial, but for the most part, I think it's a pretty good group. But I find it interesting because I think we started growing really quickly after COVID, sometime around March, April, May. and more people were coming online, and they were learning about secular AA and what's the bubbles we're talking about there. Speaking of which, can you post your contribution link in the chats? Yes, I will do that, Bree. Anyway, so where was I saying there? I was talking about the group. Oh yeah, so the group. So the thing that's interesting about that group now is that there's a lot of people that have come to that group that really don't know about the website or podcast, I don't think, but they know that it's a community of people in AA who happen to have a secular view. And then a lot of them learn about the podcast after they get into the group, which I find really interesting. And also what I find interesting about the group, and I always kind of knew this and suspected it from all the conversations I've had with people who are secularists within AA, is that they are not, they're more traditional with their program than one might think. So in other words, it's like most of the people are not anti-steps. There are people who are, for no doubt about it, but most people want to find a way to understand the steps as a secular person. I mean, that's how I was, and that's how I think most people are. Not to say all, but I think most people are. And then that didn't surprise me. But what really surprised me, I guess, was that a lot of people, there's a big variety of people, but the people are more traditional, I guess, in their feeling about AA than one might think. But there's still a lot of variety and diversity within the secular community for sure. But that kind of surprised me, I guess, that more traditional than not, people really want to follow the traditions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, my sense is that it's people who have either got some value from a traditional program in AA at some point in their life, or they've just really learned to take what they like and leave the rest. And so they're trying to connect with other people who do something along, similar lines. So, take all the good stuff and share that with each other and see what other members are using that's helpful. So yeah, that's what I like about it. And what I like about the podcast, in general, what I saw when I went to it was a podcast that yes, did talk about AA in a secular way, and maintained a close tie with what most of us, understand AA to be. But I did like that, that there were things like the Sinclair method, and and I do think that possibly 5 years ago, things like that would have been like, wild or mentioning, medication assisted recovery, those kinds of things. But I don't think they are now. I mean, in a traditional meeting, I think it's probably still frowned upon to talk about that stuff. But I think the majority of us that are secular in AA are, talk about that stuff, and most of us have different aspects of things outside of AA that we feel contribute greatly to our program or enhance things that we learned in AA or from the steps. And so, we like to synthesize and share that with each other. And that's what I liked about it was, I thought that was cool to have a place where you could still be, have your roots, I guess, and explore other ideas as well. Because I know that that's not always how it's felt in other places within AA. So yeah, I saw something the other day. Someone was posting for a weekend, Zoom conference, and the topics were, actually use the word God, and it shocked me for a minute because I'm used to this group and my meetings and just a small amount of traditional meetings, and so sometimes I forget that I'm not mainstream AA. And so it'll be nice one day when I forget and it turns out to be true that I am mainstream AA, because AA is caught up to the secular point of view.
Yeah, that's really, it's very true. We are mainstream. We are quite normalized now. We're not the bad boys of AA or the bad girls of AA. We're we're just normal. But occasionally I still get comments, mostly on YouTube. Someone says, "You're not AA. Stop this. If you don't like it, go." And if like someone's left a comment like that, I just read it today. It said, "If you don't like AA," he said, "leave AA alone. If you don't like it, go start your own thing." But the thing is, I do like it. I'm not, so it's like, I don't quite understand that. And it's that, I guess that someone thinks that if you criticize anything that you just don't like it or something, I don't understand. And actually nowadays, I think we do very little criticism. I mean, at all anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think most of us say what works for us and what doesn't work for us. And, if somebody is a part of AA, they should, be familiar with that kind of language that, that take what you want and leave the rest. But, we are in a fearful time. And so I'm sure that people stumble across the podcast on YouTube and it scares them to, see that there are other ways and other things that people are doing. I think I've mentioned before that most of the pushback I've received in the rooms when I mention that I'm atheist is from people who were like me, that came into the rooms as being atheist, agnostic, or a free thinker, and changed that because they thought they had to, because they didn't see anybody else say that, that they didn't have a higher power or, anything about an alternative higher power. It was just, God. And so they changed that in order to get sober. And so seeing somebody come in and not do that, has more to do with them and some internal work that they probably need to do on that than it does with me. And so I think sometimes that's what I read into the YouTube comments is things like that, where somebody is fearful, or they find it threatening, or whatever. But yeah, that if you don't like AA, leave it alone, or this isn't AA, then, they don't know a lot about AA. And I would suggest they study the history of AA to understand what it's about. Also, Joe has just put out a podcast that, talks about some of that. So it'd be excellent for that person to go and hear about, what criticizing other AAers, So anyway.
I did open the phones up, by the way. So if anybody wants to call in, feel free, 844-899-8278. And speaking about AA Beyond Belief, Angela, I have to say, this live stream has really been huge. Doing this with you on Fridays, this is really transformed the whole podcast, and because it's like, before, when I do a podcast, I'm just recording it with just me and the other person talking, and I still enjoy doing that, but the live stream just gives it a whole different level of involvement and engagement with people. When you have people in the chat room who will comment as you're podcasting, who become part of the episode, people who call in on the phone, having you to chat with every Friday. It's just, it's fun. I learn something every week, and it's just really been a pleasure. We have a caller. Let's see who this is. I don't know area code 240, but here it goes. Area code 240, where are you from?
Hi, this is Barbara from Maryland.
Oh, Barbara, how you doing?
Okay, just I'm trying to figure out how this all works. So, but I wanted to say hi.
Hi.
And good to hear your 5 years. I didn't realize it was that long, and just wanted to wish everybody well. I'm just really excited. Oh, I hear a cat.
Did you hear my cat from here? She drives me crazy. I have a little Siamese cat, and she wants out. I should probably go let her out.
And it's not my cat.
No.
It can be very vocal. But anyway, good to talk to you folks, and that's all I got. Just wanted to say hi.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it. I'm going to let my cat out. I'll be right back.
Bye.
Bye. So what else should we ask them, peeps?
Cats can be so annoying. They always want on the other side of the door.
Yeah. My mom has a cat, a younger one. Well, she has 2 cats, but the younger one, who's a little bit over a year, is the weirdest personality I've ever seen in a cat. And my family's had a lot of cats, but this one escorts me to the bathroom. And I'm serious. If it sees me heading towards the bathroom, it comes running. And if I try to lock it out, it does the paw thing underneath the door. And so I let it in, and then it wants to be petted during the experience. And then I stand up, and it lets itself out. And it is weird. It's such a weird cat. But yeah. Anyway, cats are crazy.
Joe's reminding us about the international podcast, so we're doing that tomorrow. Boy, and we need.
Oh yeah.
And we haven't. No, I have no idea what we're going to talk about. We have to figure that one out. But
I do.
Do you? Okay, good.
Yeah. Because when we were reminded in the Facebook group this week that I did have it on my calendar because that's what we had said. But when it was brought up, I realized that celebrating your birthday 2 days in a row would probably be boring to people because there are some people in the U.S. that listen to it as well. So I have some ideas, and I think we'll be figuring that out. What is Josie's podcast? It's
Rebellion Dogs Radio.
Rebellion Dogs, yeah.
Rebellion Dogs Radio. And let me see if I can post a link to that here. It's on the podcast page on AA Beyond Belief, and I will go get that link and put it in there for you. Yeah, but Joe's podcast is exceptional. What can I say? Now, he doesn't do them like monthly. He just does them periodically, and they're all very professional, well done, thoughtful. And he always does like this PDF thing that he creates and puts in there with the episode. But there you go. There's a link to his webpage that has the podcast information and so forth. But I think you'll like that. Yeah.
Definitely good. So besides celebrities like Josie and Dale K and Bob, have there been any other celebrities that have contacted you that say that they've listened to the podcast? I mean, you don't have to say any names.
No, not like
that, but I'm thinking like Yosha Bach or no. I'm just kidding. Most people won't know who that is.
I guess the closest. I mean, I was surprised that Tommy Rosen reached out to me to the podcast, and having him on, I was really kind of nervous about that because I don't know. I was just kind of nervous. Like, Tommy Rosen, you kidding me? But he's a really nice guy. I really liked him. He's very charismatic, and he's very passionate about what he does. And I just enjoyed the chat with him. So that was cool. And then
for those who haven't listened to that podcast, who is that? And
Tommy Rosen. He is Recovery 2.0. And he wrote, that's the name of the book, Recovery 2.0, which is basically taking your recovery beyond the 12 steps. So in other words, after you go through the steps, you have other things to work on. And so that's where he has a more of a holistic approach, I guess, to his recovery, where he's really into yoga and stuff like that. I'm going to try to find that podcast and link to it here. But he's really big into yoga. And he was the first person I met, Angela, who explained to me, and it made total sense, that his first addiction was sugar as a kid. And I remember reading it in his book, the way that he would describe it, and I could really relate to it because we're about the same age. He's a little bit younger than me, but he grew up in the same era where we'd eat these sugary cereals. And I know they still make them. But I remember as a kid pouring more sugar on top of the already sugary cereal. And it was like accepted as a normal thing, the kids would be eating all the sugar, and that stuff is so addictive. And he kind of enlightened me about that. I started thinking about that and in a different way. And I tell you, there's a lot to that. If I ever kind of lay off the sugar for a while, I find that I'm better off. I start eating a little bit more balanced diet. I'm not craving food as much. I've learned that a lot of the cravings I get is a lot of times just that the high you get from the sugar. But I learned that from Tommy. But he's really good at it. He's not like me. He takes it much more serious. And he does a good job. I really like him. He's a pretty cool guy.
Cool. And I asked you before when we were doing like a question and answer, what, one of your favorite podcasts were. And you have a caller?
You have a caller. He's been on there for, not that long, he or she. Hello. Oh, Fred. How you doing, Fred?
Good. I'm doing good. I tend to agree with you. And did you know that alcohol is really has a high content of sugar in it?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It messes with your sugar levels.
All alcohol products have a high content of sugar, and sugar is so addictive. That's the greatest addiction we start with as youngsters. That's why they say candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. You remember that old saying from your mom or dad or some older person? They say candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. And we didn't realize those type of things coming up. How addictive they were. But see, I developed diabetes, so if I want sugar, it's really kind of impossible for me. It's like I don't crave it anymore. I've been without it. I don't drink soft drinks. I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink any of these products loaded with sugar. And I grew up with the Kellogg's stuff like you did, and we didn't know Kellogg's was going to turn America into obesity and all these kinds of addictive things, because it's like a self-gratification thing. You want it right away to feel that high, and ADHD and all the things that happen to children because they get on this sugar fix. There was this test they did. It was called the marshmallow test, and they put a marshmallow on a plate in front of a child in a secluded room, and they said if you want this marshmallow, if you don't eat it, I have to go somewhere, and if you don't eat it and I come back, I'll give you a second one. But if you eat it, that's all you get. So, they did this test, and very few children succeeded to stave off the sugar addiction. And there was only a few that would get to. So it's incredible what we inherited from people, families, tradition, these things that were supposed to be healthy. That was supposed to be healthy food. But we don't know what mistakes we make until we find out later in life, and then we realize, my goodness, so. But John and Angela, I want to congratulate you on 5 years of this live broadcast and all the things, all the interviews that you've done with people are so astonishingly wonderful, and all the comments that people have made, and the intellect, the things that you can learn from listening to the show are so wonderful. I gotta thank you again and again.
Well,
and
thank you.
I really appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Fred. You have a good evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was nice. That's, Angela, I was talking to you, and I know you feel the same way because you get this too sometimes, but I get maybe 2 or 3 emails a month from somebody who just found the podcast, or maybe they've been listening for a while and they wanted to reach out and let me know how much it meant to them. Maybe they were listening to it while they were in treatment, or it was the first time they had ever heard an atheist talk about recovery and AA, and it just blows me away. And that's the kind of thing it's hard for me to verbalize how much it what it does to me, because I don't quite I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to do that, and that people are helped by this is even better. So I'm glad that happens, but it's not really me. It's the people talking with me, I think, so anyway, but
yeah, no, I'm always surprised as well, that when people find it useful. I'm happy, that it is, but oftentimes we end the podcast and somebody, will ask me how it went, and I'm like, I don't know, or, I don't know what some people get out of it. But I do know for me, it's kind of like when you go to meetings and stuff, that sometimes you'll get something that you weren't expecting when you walked in. Or if it just was kind of a meeting, there might be times later down the line that I'll remember something that somebody said in there that was really helpful. And I appreciate that. So yeah, when people call us or send us messages and let us know, that it's been helpful to them, because this really is, we put ourselves out there in a way, particularly in YouTube land, that not always kind responses, and so doing that, is worth it when we know that it helps, at least one person. And it makes it worth it to, sound like a dork or whatever it is that that we feel like when we've done this. So it's nice that we get to be helpful, and a lot of the topics that we've been able to do, obviously we're passionate about, and so I love that part of getting to share things that I'm learning in my recovery that seem to be, what is it they say in business, like the learning edge or something like that, that I could share with other people, because that's what I'm always trying to do, is find ways to understand myself and others, and be able to be, kinder and gentler and all of that. And so if I can share that with people and they can get something out of that, then I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Bob K is out there, and I can't end the night without talking a little bit about Bob and his role at AA Beyond Belief. When we first got the site set up, Roger set up a lot of articles in AA Beyond Belief on our WordPress dashboard that were chapters from Bob's book, Key Players in AA History. And we've actually now posted all of those. Finally, this year, the last of those articles got posted. So for the first year or year and a half, whatever, a lot of the material being posted there was written by Bob. He would, not only were we posting his articles from key players in AA history, but he was writing stuff all the time, and not only that, he was a huge moral support for me. So like in the very beginning, the only people I was communicating with, this is before Doris came on board. The only person I was communicating with was Bob and Roger. Those were the two that were kind of helping me. And then Roger was really kind of wanting to take a break. So Roger left and it was just me and Bob, and it was in the very beginning, it was kind of intimidating to be doing this because I just held AA Agnostica in such high esteem. And if I posted an article and it wasn't just perfect, and it got some criticism on Facebook, for God's sakes, it was crushing, but Bob always has a good sense of humor, and he was very helpful with helping me not to worry about things or take things too seriously. So he was a huge help in those early days. And so was Thomas B. He was another person who wrote a lot. But I really need to thank Bob because he's still doing it. He just sent me an article here just this last weekend, and he's a great writer. And what can I thank you, Bob. So without him, I don't think that we would have ever made it through the first year. I don't think that we would have ever had. I don't think that the site with the articles would have made it without Bob's early contributions, because that got people going to the website because they like reading his material. And as more people started going to the site, and then we started getting more contributions from other people too. So Bob, otherwise it would have just been a podcast, I think. So thank you, Bob. Really, that was very helpful of you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
And I'm sure people called you sweet at some point, but you were too drunk to know it.
Yeah, so. Right. Bob, he's crazy. Anyway, it was nice to finally meet Bob. And when did I first meet? I guess I first met him in Toronto at in 2018. I guess was when I first met him in person, and then I saw him again in Hamilton for SOAR.
Ah,
yeah.
It's funny because I was in Santa Monica, but I only recall meeting Josie and Dorothy and Pam. And Glenn, and I may have talked to some other people, but a lot of people don't know that I'm actually very introverted, and so unless I know a lot about the conversation that's happening, or I have a couple of my posse with me or something, I don't talk a lot, and so that one I enjoyed. There were a lot of great speakers, and it was really interesting. But yeah, I didn't go to the second one, and then again, went to Toronto and met a few more people. But still, I think I just said hi to you and to Roger, and you guys were nice because my home group gives you money. Mm-hmm. and pins. You both were quite excited about the pins. And so I shared a room with somebody that that was new to me, and talked to a couple of people, but yeah, I still wasn't that familiar with the majority of the community, and so I'm looking forward to when we're going to be able to meet together again in larger groups, so that I can talk to some of the people that have been writing in and to listen to the show. I did go to Arizona for the thing last November. And that was great. And I got to talk to a few people, and that was where a couple of people came up to me and said hi, and that they listened to the podcast. And that was like the first time I was like, whoa, people who don't know us, are listening to the podcast. That's so cool. So yeah.
Well, we're fortunate that for the community that we have, that there's enough people that it's amazing that, we have this online community that kind of spans on social media and the website and YouTube and all these different places. and we all kind of come together, and there's lots of us. I mean, there's thousands of us. AA Agnostica has had 3 million views, I think now, since it's been going. AA Beyond Belief has had over 1 million views by now. The podcast gets listened to by maybe 10 or 12,000 downloads a month. The website, maybe 15,000 a month goes to that or so, or 20,000. I mean, it's a lot of people, and people are learning about us all the time, finding the podcast all the time and the website, and discovering this whole thing about secular AA. Of course, now with COVID though, that's all. It's these Zoom meetings that are doing it. That's how people are learning about secular AA, through the Zoom meetings now, more than anything else. And that's just taking it off to a whole different level. When this COVID thing ends, I think we're going to see more secular meetings going on, both online and in person. Kind of my feeling anyway. I could be wrong, but more people have certainly been exposed to it thanks to COVID.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people were forced to go online and Google. And because, you and particularly Roger's website has been around for so long, and the online based secular AA meetings that, just people were flooding them, because that's how algorithms work, is that, things that have been around for the longest get put up first. And so, so all of these people in AA who never knew that there was secular options and who aren't secular found out because of COVID. And so, so I think it'll be a good thing in the long run for our community.
We have a caller. Let's see.
Hello.
Hello?
John.
Yes.
It's Bob K.
Oh, hey, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. I just want to say a few things. We're doing good things here. I think we've reached a lot of people that aren't well served by the conventional AA market. And, I remember when Josie started the first agnostic group in Toronto, and people gossiped about him, and he said, "Oh, those guys are gathering together. They just want to be special." It's hard to meet somebody that wants to help people more than Josie does. And, I think being around that sort of thing, we picked up on the vibe. And, we are reaching people, we are helping people, and I think that's tremendous. Back in the earlier days of Agnostica, Roger would phone me sometimes and say, "Have you got anything for this week?" "I've got nothing." And, we didn't have a bunch of contributors. That came later. And it was funny. I'd phone him with some brilliant essay, and later on he'd say, "Oh, I think I can get that up in 9 weeks." And so things change. And, Beyond Belief's has had input from all over the world, as Agnostica did, and, Los Angeles and England. And I think the diversity of writers has been a tremendous asset. And anyway, you've just gone a different direction with the podcast and stuff, and added a real dimension that, not everybody among us are big readers, and they like listening. And anyway, it's terrific. You guys have done great. And Angela is delightful. And you are delightful, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. Nice hearing from you again.
Sweet.
Bob is sweet.
He is.
So, yeah. And AA Agnostica, Roger, he never did retire, which is fine. It's like, so now Roger's got his site, AA Agnostica, and he's got some great stuff going on there. And he and I are still great friends, and we talk about on Zoom privately, once or twice a month anyway. Always stay in touch, and that's been a real. It's just been really nice. So now it's been like for 5 years I've known Roger, really since I met him in Santa Monica, and we've become really good friends. So many other people I've become friends with too. You, Angela, and Joe, and gosh, so many other people that, I just, it's kind of bizarre. The people that they're all over the over the world.
All very bizarre.
Yeah, it's all over the world. I mean, people all over the world that really, honestly, if it weren't for this, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have had the experience of getting to know them and learning from them and so forth. So, and I do like the international aspect too.
Right. Yeah. And I like having multiple websites and multiple places for people to get information. Kind of like now we have multiple books that people can, get to learn more about, secular history, or doing the steps in a secular way, or having, a daily meditation that is less, gaudy. Stuff like that. So, I think that both your websites and this community is bringing that about even more. And I think that's going to be helpful.
Something funny I just thought about when we talk about this whole international thing and talking about AA Agnostica. So when we first started AA Beyond Belief, and I was setting up the settings in WordPress, and so you have the choice of setting up what kind of English you're going to use for the website. It could be American English, it could be British English, it could be Canadian English. So I thought I was going to set up the site to be Canadian English, okay? And it was going to be in honor of Roger and the groups in Toronto. Okay, this is the way I was thinking. I was like, so anyway. So I set it up in Canadian English.
Very noble of you. Yes.
It was driving me crazy, Angela. I couldn't do it. I mean, it was like I felt like I was misspelling everything. I'd look at stuff and I think, wait a second, what is that? Am I spelling this right? I couldn't do it. And so finally I said, okay, this is ridiculous. I don't think anybody's going to even notice. So I changed it back to American English. And Bob says that he writes in American. That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, man. Yeah. So yeah, I think you did a good job on your celebration episode. And if you could change anything about it, what would you change?
About this whole AA Beyond Belief thing.
Yeah, like would you? Change the name? Do you?
Yeah, I thought about that actually. Sometimes I like with the podcast in particular, having it called having the name AA in it. Sometimes it causes a problem because I like to talk about things other than AA. Like we were saying at the beginning, I like to talk about stuff like we would talk about after the meeting, And some people just don't appreciate that because they see the word AA in there, and then I'm talking about sugar addiction or something, or I'm talking about safe injection sites, and so I sometimes do regret that. And the funny thing is,
change it around. You could be Beyond AA Belief.
I could, and you can always kind of change it up. But the thing is, I never really came up with a name for the podcast. I wasn't originally going to name it AA Beyond Belief. We called the site AA Beyond Belief. And then when I put the podcast up, I just said, okay, let's name it after the website because I couldn't really think of the name of it. But that's one thing I think about. But then I actually asked people about that, and most people prefer that we just leave it as AA Beyond Belief because it helped people find it that way easier, So other than that, I don't know if there's anything that I would change. It's just been a great experience, and thank you, Angela. Yeah. Thank you very much for this evening and for all of these live streams that we've done.
Yeah, enjoy it. It's been fun.
Yeah. So I guess we can head on out. So thanks again for listening to another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back again next week for another live stream, and we'll continue posting episodes during the week. Maybe on Wednesdays, I think, is what I'm going to try to do. I've interviewed a couple of people here recently that we'll be posting soon, so be on the lookout for that. And I guess with that, I'll say goodbye. Take care, everybody. It's been great seeing you again. Have fun. Have a great weekend.